So today I'm talking about my book and my concept, One Part Plant. And I wanted to show you first, this is how I used to feel about healthy food. Also this. Here, come on. Oh. That's how I used to feel about healthy food. And I think that through social media and online, we kind of get this impression that people just woke up and love green smoothies and they just ate kale right away. But that was not my story. And I think that that's okay. And I think that it's okay if we kind of ease into eating healthier. So I was on, I'm going to start this. I was on a cab ride coming back from actually shooting my cookbook. And the cab driver was asking, like, what do you do? What are you coming in for? I said, I actually just shot my cookbook. And he was like, what is it about? And I said, it's about plant-based food. And he said, what's that? And I told him what it was, and he just was totally tuning me out. And he was like, why would you ever eat that way? And then I told him my story about, which I'm going to tell you guys about, you know, my pain and the disease that I have. And he just turned around and he looked at me. He was like, next time you really need to lead with that. So today I'm going to lead with that because it is more powerful, and I think, when you can hear that someone has healed themselves and really seen the power of food. So I have something called endometriosis, and what endometriosis is when it's the lining of your uterus grows onto other parts of your body. It is a very painful condition, and the crazy thing is, well, okay, first, actually, let's talk a little bit about the symptoms. Extremely painful periods, pain during sex, blood clotting, painful bowel movements. And the craziest thing about endo is there are things that you wouldn't expect to be related to your period. So women, you can just, look at these other cool symptoms. And I had every single one of these. And the crazy thing is that 1 in 10 women suffer from endometriosis, but it takes an average of 10 years for women to be diagnosed. So 176 million women have endometriosis, and it takes 10 years to be diagnosed and over 8 doctors. So that means there are millions of women out there that have this disease and have no idea because their doctors are either not believing their symptoms, they are, women kind of think they have to be tough and push through on their periods, but this is just, it's not cool, and we need to do something about it. So treatment options for endometriosis. Once I was finally diagnosed with endo, it took me 10 years actually to get diagnosed, and once I was diagnosed, I had multiple surgeries, I was on painkillers, I smoked weed for the first time at 33 years old, and I smoked it every single day, multiple times a day, because it was the only thing that could get me through the day. And sometimes I cry about this part. I was so severely depressed because it affected my relationships, my career, everything in my life was affected by this disease. And so after multiple surgeries, a doctor told me, my doctor, after seeing me so depressed and just going through all these things, she said, it's time to get a hysterectomy. And so I've got a second opinion, and that doctor said, it's time to get a hysterectomy. And I don't know if someone doesn't know what a hysterectomy is, it's actually when they take out your uterus and all your parts that makes you a woman. But crazy enough, I was actually okay with that because I just wanted to be able to live again. So I decided that I would get a hysterectomy, but right before I was about to, a friend of mine was staying with me, and she saw the pain that I was in. And I don't know if anyone in this room, you can raise your hand if you've ever experienced chronic pain, but it's something that I see some nods, it's something that you try to hide a lot from your friends and family because it's not cool to always be complaining about things hurting. So I hid this pain from all of my friends, and I would just stay inside a lot. But she was staying with me, and she saw me I almost collapsed, and I had to hold myself up. And she then took it upon herself. She went back and she started doing research about ways that I could help myself before I got the hysterectomy, and she found a website about how plant-based food could help endometriosis. And now this is 7 years ago, before we were having talks about how plant-based food could help endometriosis. And so I got this website, and my former career is graphic design. This website was full of clip art from the, I don't even know what decade. It had Comic Sans, it just looked disgusting. And I was thinking, there's no way that this is gonna help, because if plant-based food could help my endometriosis, like, why has none of my doctors told me about this? So I'm kind of a people pleaser, and I told my friend, I will try this diet for 3 weeks and see what happens. I'm gonna get the hysterectomy anyway, but I'm gonna try it. And it worked. And so after 3 weeks, my husband said, this is the awesome part that makes me cry, is he said that I had my sparkle back, and that I was finally able to get out of bed again. So, we're gonna talk a lot about, how I did this and what a plant-based diet is, but who here, does anyone eat a plant-based diet or sort of a plant-based diet now? Okay, cool. So a plant-based diet, I like to kind of make the distinction. I'm also pre-period right now, PMSing, so I might cry more. That's like one symptom I haven't been able to control, is my emotions. A plant-based diet is different, I think, than a vegan or vegetarian diet, because vegan doesn't necessarily mean healthy. Oreos are vegan. That doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. And I think veganism too, which I love my vegan friends, it's definitely sometimes more of an ethical or political way of eating, where a plant-based diet is really focused on whole foods that are minimally processed or not processed at all. So we're talking veggies, nuts, grains, seeds, legumes. And plant-based, I always have a problem saying what it's not, because I don't want people to feel like, well, I can't have this, I can't have this. But it's not any animal products. I just say it to make it simple. I do eat honey, but I stay away from anything that is not derived from trees, the ground, that's not a plant. So this is what I thought I did have to eat when I started my plant-based diet. The very first meal that I had on my new plant-based diet, because I also did not cook, it was a corn tortilla with salsa on top, because it's like, okay, this is what I can have, this is what I know how to get at the grocery store, and I am not kidding you, I ate corn tortillas with salsa on top for 2 weeks, because I had no idea what to eat. I didn't really know about food blogs, none of my friends were plant-based, but then after, I realized this is the kind of stuff I actually eat now. So when I first changed my diet, I would say for the first 3 months, I cried. There were a lot of points that I thought that, it sounds very depressing to say now, but there were a lot of moments where I thought getting the hysterectomy would just be easier than to change my diet, and I can't believe I'm saying that now, but I just didn't understand how to socialize on my new diet. Like, I didn't understand how to go to Thanksgiving and not disappoint my family for not eating the foods that they wanted me to eat, and feeling so much anxiety around the fact that I couldn't have turkey and mashed potatoes and all the things that I liked. So I'm doing this thing that's actually working and making me feel better, yet I hate the fact that I have to do it. So then what I call the birthday cake incident happened. I went to, this is about 3 or 4 months into my diet, I went to a very good friend's birthday party, and they brought the cake out. And everyone started singing, and people were, getting excited about the cake, and I just walked straight out the door and I started crying. And I know that sounds like a super baby thing to do, but I wasn't just crying because I couldn't eat the cake, but I was crying because I felt like this tradition was over for me. I was no longer going to be able to enjoy this tradition of birthday cake and be with my friends and my family, and I had to be the person that's sitting in the corner without anything. And so I left that party and I decided, this, stop. You have to figure out how to eat this way in a way that makes you happy, in a way that doesn't make you feel alone, and a way that doesn't make you feel depressed. So I decided to learn how to cook, and I started with cookies and cakes because I wanted, this is me cooking. So I like really learned to cook, and I'm telling you guys, like I did not cook ever before. When I made rice, it would either burn or it would be sitting in like this much water. Like I just didn't, my husband made all of our meals, but it was this important to me to not get a hysterectomy to learn how to cook. So when I started to learn to cook, I really started it in a gentle way, and I was nice to myself. And what I did is I said, okay, so you're not gonna eat dairy anymore, but you can have it once a week. And then it was, wow, that once a week doesn't really make me feel so good. So then I had it once every 2 weeks. And then slowly it just was like, every time I eat this, my cramps feel worse, I don't feel good. And it was kind of a slow progression of seeing what were my triggers, what made me feel good, what made me didn't feel good. And, you know, after time, I was able to adapt to a plant-based diet. So after a while, so many of my friends who were like very not into what I was doing and thought I was being extreme and weird, and then they were kind of coming around and be like, your skin's looking kind of good, and like you seem like you're a much happier person, like what are you doing? And so I said, I'm eating a totally plant-based diet. And of course, everyone says, there's no way I could do that. What about cheese? There's no way I could give up this. And so I started to help people just start by eating one plant-based meal a day. Like, don't you feel like that feels like feasible to just eat one plant-based meal a day? So I think that I get a lot of pushback from people in the vegan and plant-based community telling me, yeah, like people should be eating every single plant-based meal. Like every meal should be plant-based. I just don't think that that's everyone's path, and I just don't know that everyone can get there that way. So I don't feel like it has to be all or nothing when you're easing into a change, and so I really support trying one a day and going from there. So again, now that I've said all that, I just wanted to reference again what plant-based foods are. And so I think the number one tool for success for me turning plant-based is being prepared. And for me, when I used to go to the grocery store, I would have all of these like visions of me like going through the aisles and just taking this and like just knowing what to buy. But I'd either buy like $200 worth of stuff that I didn't use, or I would leave with an apple because I just felt like so overwhelmed. And so when I started to change my diet, I was starting to notice that I was buying the same 10 things, the same 12 things over and over again. And no matter what, I would have those in my pantry at all times. And I felt like if I had these and I had some fruits and vegetables, I would know what to do. Because I think the hardest thing about changing your diet outside of the social aspect is just knowing what to make every day and just being prepared every day. Because when you get home from work, or you've got, you know, a long day of class and you come home and you're like, what, I don't know what to make, so I'm just gonna order pizza, or I'm just gonna order this. But if you actually have the stuff to make it, I think that that is the number one tool to starting with a plant-based diet. And I think it starts with your pantry. I think it's also with travel. I think it's huge for social events. I know when I go to weddings, I actually bring my own cake or pie or treat in my bag. I bring those Hail Marys. I don't know if you guys have seen those before. Do you guys like those? Yeah. And I just whip it out when I just like kind of put my plate under, I put it on the thing, I bring it back up, and like no one knows that like my dessert is, people are always like, what do you have? And I'm like, don't worry about it. So I think it's being prepared and just like, don't expect to go to a party and there's gonna be something for you to eat. Like bring something that everyone can share, but also don't announce that this is gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, and vegan, because like then automatically people are like, no, thank you. My friend Damar, who has transitioned to plant-based recently, he always makes a joke that if you went to the grocery store and above the produce aisle it said vegan, like no one would ever go in there. You know what I mean? Like no one would be buying apples. So I think being prepared. So I wanted to take you through my top 10 pantry ingredients, just to kind of like, if you guys are interested in maybe transitioning into a plant-based diet. So as you begin to navigate these ingredients, I think the key is to be, you know, that person that you always see that's like, and they look and you're like, they look at every single label. You have to become that person. And I think one of the hardest things for me with changing my diet was this identity shift of, you know, before I changed my diet, I thought that vegans were weird, healthy food was kind of lame, yoga was like all like woo-woo people. But as I like transitioned my diet, I'm like, it's okay if I'm kind of like that now. And I think it's a weird identity shift to like not be the friend that you can call to go out for pizza and go drinking with, but now like maybe you're the friend that they call to get a smoothie or go to yoga or something. But it's a really hard mental shift because you sometimes have to leave some people behind that aren't down with your change, and it's a hard transition. So yeah, become that person that reads labels. So these are my top 10 pantry essentials that I always have stocked no matter what. We'll start with, I personally eat gluten-free. I don't think that that's right for everybody. Like some people love gluten. For me personally, with endometriosis, it's such an inflammatory disease that if I introduce more inflammatories, it just makes it worse. So I always make sure that I have gluten-free flours in my cabinet. And these are my favorites. I would say that brown rice is probably the most affordable because some of these, like almond meal, are like $12 for like a little bag, and you're like, what? So I think that look for ones that fit your budget too, and like splurge on an almond meal sometimes if you want to. But I always make sure to have some gluten-free flours for cookies or thickening gravies or things like that. Plant-based milks, huge. I really recommend getting unsweetened because if you want to make mashed potatoes or something savory, having a cinnamon almond milk is just going to make everything taste disgusting. So I think start with the unsweetened and then kind of go from there. And they're a lot more, you can use them for different things. I also think that in the wellness community, you're supposed to soak all your own almonds, get a nut bag, make your own almond milk. But if that is not in your budget, if that's not something that you have time to do, I think it's totally fine if you buy it. Like, I don't think there's any shame in buying almond milk. And don't let people on the internet tell you otherwise. So nuts and seeds, these, I mean, you guys probably know nuts and seeds. But these are just like so helpful to always have on hand, whether you're just like doing snacking or making granola. I would say that nuts and seeds are really huge for my kitchen. Tahini. Does everyone love tahini in here? Yeah? Okay. I think that if you're not familiar with tahini, if you've ever had hummus, tahini is what makes the hummus. I use tahini almost every single day. You can make a really simple dressing just by mixing tahini, water, lemon juice, a little salt and pepper, and just drizzle it over everything. I also love having like a sprouted bread, like an avocado toast with tahini drizzled on that with some, see, you're kind of liking that, aren't you? With some red pepper flakes. It's a really great, just go-to in your kitchen. And I would say my favorite brand is this brand called Soom, S-O-O-M, because you know how some tahinis have that like this much oil on the top and you literally have to just like stand there for 20 minutes and do this? Soom does not have that. It's probably my favorite brand. So natural sweeteners. I want to make clear that I'm very aware that sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar. But I think that if you are going to have sugar, natural sweeteners are going to be your best bet. I know personally for me, white sugar, even cane sugar, things like that, they also really increase my inflammation and make my period symptoms a lot worse. So, and like I said, I'm not vegan, so I do use honey. I do like to use raw honey to make sure that it isn't totally processed and you're still getting some of those nutrients out of it. Maple syrup, dates, brown rice stevia, monk fruit. And you know, when you're looking for these types of ingredients, everything that I've mentioned, when you flip over the label, it should just have that ingredient. The craziest thing is if you go to the grocery store and you flip over maple syrup, like a Aunt Jemima or a log cabin, there isn't even maple syrup in it. It's like, thank you. It's really gross. It's corn syrup, coloring. It's like, wait, there's no maple syrup in this? So once you start becoming that label reader, just flip it over and really start to look for the ingredient that you're trying to buy, which I know sounds crazy, but that's what you need to do. Okay, beans and lentils, they are like one of my friends. One thing for me personally, I think it's really important to, even though they're plants, doesn't mean that plants are always gonna go well with every single person's body. So like for me, chickpeas, like get out of the room. It is like gassy, it is not a good situation. So like when I make hummus, I make sure that I use like a white bean or something else. Like I don't really personally use chickpeas. So just kind of see like what's working for your body, because I don't think that it's blanket nutrition for everyone. And I mean, I use a lot of lentils too. And again, okay, here's another situation where if you don't have time to soak beans for a day and then boil them it's okay if you use canned beans sometimes. It's like totally okay. I just like, with all of this, I just want you to get started. Like we're busy, we have things going on, and it's not going to hurt anyone if you use canned beans. It would be awesome if the can was BPA free and everything, but it's okay if you use canned. Okay, we're getting through these gluten-free grains. Again, I personally stay away from gluten, but you know, there's a lot of grains that you can use. These are the ones I probably stick to the most. Brown rice personally makes me super inflamed and kind of hurts my stomach, so I'm more of like a jasmine girl. But again, like I think you gotta explore and see what works best for you. Coconut, milk, cream, oil, unsweetened flakes water. I don't know, did you guys just see that new report that coconut oil is like the most evil thing ever? It's like, oh my God. I think obviously we're not just like eating it by the spoonful, but do what works for you. I think it's great for cooking. It's a great replacer for butter if you're making cookies and things. And I mean, I don't know what I would do without coconut milk for making different kind of curries and Asian cuisine. So I think that these are always stocked too. Seed and nut butters. I'm sure there's a lot of people in here that some days their lunch is like a scoop of almond butter from the fridge. Like it happens sometimes. I think that these are great to make, again, like curries and cookies and, you know, just healthier options. And seed and nut butters are one of those things that, again, when you flip over that label, look for the nut, maybe some salt, maybe some oil, maybe, but it doesn't need sugar and soy and all the other things that a lot of nut butters have. And when it says natural on the front, like don't believe that. Like Jiffy Natural still has sugar in it. So flip it over, read it. And then last, veggie broth. I always have veggie broth stocked up. Again, it's okay if you don't make your own. I think I've made my own like 2 times in my life. It's just not something that I make. I like buying it. It's good when you're buying veggie broth to look for some that is MSG free, doesn't have weird coloring and flavors. But what I love about veggie broth is obviously it's great to make soups and stews and things, but I also use it to saute my vegetables instead of oil. I have nothing against oil, but for me personally, a lot of oil doesn't sit well with my stomach. So just instead of reaching for the olive oil, just put a little splash of veggie broth, and it actually kind of makes your veggies a little bit more flavorful. And I also use it when I make rice. Instead of using water, I'll use veggie broth instead too. So 2 bonus ones that are sort of like a little bit more weirdo ones that I always like to give the ones that are simple and don't throw out the ones that are a little bit more obscure. But nutritional yeast, it kind of looks like fish food. Has anyone had it in here? Okay, yeah. So nutritional yeast literally looks like yellow fish food. You can buy it online. You can get it at any health food store has it. And actually now a lot of, like Trader Joe's has nutritional yeast now too. It's a really great, like, listen, with plant-based diets, nothing is gonna actually taste like cheese, but you can get a cheesy vibe. And I think nutritional yeast helps you achieve that cheesy vibe to things. So like for instance, I love using it to make mac and cheese and things like that. And one of my son's favorite dishes is I make him some lentil pasta, a little bit of olive oil, nutritional yeast, and it's just kind of like a Parmesan cheese, macaroni and cheese. And then tamari. Are you guys familiar with tamari? Okay, cool. So soy sauce, traditional soy sauce, is a lot of times filled with a lot of different fillers, and it always has gluten in it. So if you're staying away from if you want to have a gluten-free diet, tamari is a gluten-free soy sauce, and so it's a good option. So these are just some of my favorite things that I've made with all of the things we just talked about. This is probably my most favorite recipe. Well, I have a lot of favorite recipes, but I love this one. This is a white bean buffalo hummus. So I just use white beans, tahini, buffalo wing sauce, and I just make a little hummus with it. Chilaquiles. So just to review, moving forward, I mean, are people interested in trying one plant-based meal a day? Yeah? Do people already do that now? Yeah? Okay, cool. So to start, remember, it does not have to be all or nothing. It's okay if you ease into the change. And I think that being prepared when you travel, when you just like are getting home from work, is going to be the key to easing into that diet. And I have a newsletter if you want to join it. Every Sunday I send out a newsletter. It's kind of cool because I've been doing a little bit less social media and just really focusing more on the newsletter, because I think with algorithms and things, there's like a 30% chance that anyone's ever going to see anything you post, which is kind of depressing. So with my newsletter, it's the one thing that like for sure people will get, which is kind of exciting. And then I also have a podcast in this cookbook. So do you guys have any questions at all?